Hey guys, it's Georgia B. Welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all ready because day 4 is an absolute doozy. So kick back, relax in your bed, couch, wherever you are, and be thankful for the comfort and how well rested you are at this time. So day 4 was a jam-packed day. After a wonderful buffet breakfast at 7 a.m, we had some staff from the MLA Indonesia visit us at the hotel and give us a presentation about the Indonesian cattle industry. Their presentation was incredibly informative. They discussed Indonesia's beef consumption being 2.6 to 2.9 kilos per year, compared to Australians who consume probably more than 25 kilos per year. So that's a huge difference. They also gave us more information about the Indonesian government's push for self-sufficiency in rice, sugar, soy, corn and beef. Locals are unsure why beef is actually on the list, considering it is considered a luxury, and consumption is obviously not very high. The aim is that 90% of domestic cattle will be used, with about 10% imports. This goal was initially aimed to be achieved in 2014. This goal has since been changed to 2026. This is the reason that the government introduced the 1 to 5 breeder feeder policy that we heard about yesterday. They also aim to get as many cattle pregnant as possible. So in 2018, the artificial insemination target was 3 million head, and the pregnancy target was 2.1. So in reality, they actually inseminated 3.9 million, with semen sourced locally from 6 different breeding centres, and 2.05 million became pregnant, making the pregnancy rate approximately 50%. So it's hard to know whether they were actually successful in achieving their goal or not. Alright, so the government also wanted meat to be more affordable and readily available as well. So normally 700,000 to 800,000 head are being imported each year. However, in the 2011-2012 quota period, Australia enforced only 280,000 head were imported. This increased the costs from $6.50 to $12 AU. And caused significant problems in Indonesia as well. Removal of the quota and more relaxed restrictions began moving this in the right direction. Indonesia has also started to diversify supply, such as from India, Mexico and Spain. This year, Indonesia started to import cattle from Brazil as well. However, there is the risk of foot and mouth disease, which will affect exporting from Indonesia. Australia is still a key supplier, as we are a highly efficient beef producer, have high quality regulations regarding health, welfare and integrity. Australia is also free from FMD, and we're also halal certified as well. Indonesia have several religious festivals which require increased importing of cattle. For example, the Fida festival in May to July signifies the end of Ramadan. Also Kurban, where locals sacrifice sheep, goat and cattle. They do have regulations on this though. So the MLA aims to improve performance along the supply chain. They talked about the Export Supply Chain Assurance Scheme, or ESCAS, and the difference that ESCAS has made to the health and welfare of animals, and it's just extraordinary. There are some locals that still don't follow ESCAS though, which is a bit annoying, but what can you do? So before ESCAS, the cattle used to be lifted by their horns off of ships. They were transported in a small vehicle with like bamboo sort of fencing around it. They weren't given any ramps, so the cattle had to jump off the trucks, which just caused all sorts of injuries. They were using ropes for restraint. They didn't use any sort of stunning methods, and they were only given really basic training regarding kill methods. So it just not ethical or welfare focused at all. So now after SCAS being brought in, the cattle are moved off of ships via ramps, and the same with trucks, they've got ramps. They're given restraint boxes, they use stunning, and that's just improved training in all areas regarding handling, restraint, stunning, and the killing methods as well. Interestingly, wet markets sell all cuts of meat for the same price. Approximately 70% of beef is consumed in Buxo balls. Premium Buxo balls have about 80% meat. However, most will have less than 50% meat, with the remaining 20%, 20 to 50% being starch. There are over 6 million Buxo sellers in Indonesia, so it's pretty popular. One night later in the tour, we all tried Buxo balls. It was interesting, to say the least. I personally did not enjoy it. It was just a weird sort of hot dog kind of texture with not a lot of flavour, so it wasn't really for me. While talking to the MLA staff after the presentation, they told us something about Indonesia, which I thought was incredibly interesting. Due to being so densely populated, it's really weird. On even numbered dates, so like the 2nd, the 4th, the 6th, etc., only people with even numbered license plates are allowed to drive, and vice versa, so odd numbers on odd days. People in higher jobs such as like police, government officials, teachers, all those sorts of things, they had different coloured license plate, which means that they could drive any day. Which, I don't know. I mean, like, I guess if it works, it works. You got to get people off the road somehow, don't you? But yeah, I just could not believe it. I couldn't imagine having to pick the days that I'm allowed to drive based on my license plate and working my life out surrounding that. It's just wacky. We're very, very lucky. Following the meeting with MLA, we began the drive to Tum feedlot. On the way, we stopped at a local port as well to have a look at the ships there. And they were vastly different to what you'd see in Australia. These boats had paint chipping off absolutely everywhere. Some of them looked like they could sink at any moment, with the surface of the water literally only being like half a metre away from the deck. Like, there was just no room for error. The people working at the port were some of the strongest men I've ever seen, but you wouldn't even know it just by looking at them, because, you know, these men would not be any more than 60 kilos themselves, and yet they were lifting 30 to 50 kilo bags just like they were nothing, tossing them over their shoulder onto the trucks and everything. There's just an insane amount of strength there, especially in the hot, humid weather of Jakarta. So around 4 p.m. we arrived at the Tum feedlot, where we met Wilson Hassan, who has been running the company for the last 8 years. Wilson's dad and brother, started the company in 1987, which at the time was a piggery. So they faced a lot of criticism and controversy owning a piggery in a Muslim country. So after shutting down for a year, they decided to transition into cattle in 2000. At the start, they were purchasing local cattle and found the business difficult due to the cattle not performing very well. In 2001, they looked towards the Australian Embassy and began importing from Elders between 2001 and 2012. They now import from Elders, Frontier and LSS as well. Their best year was in 2014, where they imported 96,000 head of cattle, and 35% of the imports are heifers, with the rest being steers or bulls. Wilson took us on a guided tour around the feedlot, starting in the feed mill. Unfortunately, we weren't allowed to take photos or videos inside the feed mill, but it was huge, absolutely huge. Wilson gave us some details about the ingredients that they used in their feed and explained that they purely utilise byproducts from the human feed industry in order to save costs. So 10 to 20% of the diet is made up of cassava, which is a root that they chip for the cattle's main source of starch. Cassava contains about 81% starch, which is significantly higher than corn, which a lot of other feedlots use. Also included in the diet is wheat bran, which is cheap and absorbs molasses. Wheat bran is used as a source of starch, protein, and energy. The diet also includes coconut meal as a byproduct from palm oil production. Coconut meal is cheaper than soybean meal and has significant binding characteristics as well. They also utilize sugars in the form of wafers, lollies, and other treats like that. They have a one-way in, one-way out process with their feed and include weighing, processing, and mixing in that. The final mixed feed smells absolutely delicious. Toombs never used to feed roughage. However, they now source some roughage from about 3 hours away, and even though it's not the best quality, they make do with what they've got. Toomb feedlot is nice and close to the city, which means there is less cost associated with travel and also less shrinkage of cattle during transport as well. There are less plants and farms near the feedlot though, due to the high costs of being close to the city. The trucks they use for feed can hold up to about 25 tonnes of feed. They still feed some cattle manually, however, which increases the amount of jobs available for the locals. For example, in Australian stations, there may be one person to every 2,000 head of cattle. In Indonesia, however, there are 2 people for every 100 to 200 head. Toombs have a carrying capacity of about 49,000 head and utilise cement flooring as it is cheap and easy to wash down every day. They're planning on expanding the feedlot, which would allow about 81,000 head capacity. However, they believe it is likely that developers will buy the land before this can all actually happen. They prefer a 75% Brahman cross for heat resistance and decreased hide. The crosses are often with Charolais. Weight gain slows over time and feed conversion increases, so they aim to keep the cattle for about 90 to 100 days. They prefer bulls and aim for about 150 kilo gain in live weight in 90 days. Toomb has 15 clients, all in the wet markets. So for this reason, their cattle are sent to the abattoir at night to be killed and ready for wet markets from about 2 a.m. Wilson explained that there are 3 important pillars in the feedlot industry. Firstly, and most importantly, genetics and sources. So this is important to produce top quality cattle and maintain strong relationships with everyone along the supply chain. Secondly, nutrition and gains. So in order to get the most value in weight gain, it's important to have high quality nutrition and the best technologies to create highest efficiencies. Thirdly is management, which includes farming practices, ensuring they are ethical and result in high productivity, as well as marketing strategies as well. The end product, less fat, better meat colour, higher yields, higher meat density, and best price. Wilson then discussed the economic aspects of the feedlot industry in Indonesia and blew my mind with his knowledge of numbers. Currently, 98% of cattle in Indonesia are held in village households. Approximately 85% of these people use their cattle as a bank and only sell them as they need to. The challenges that Indonesia currently face include breeding, buffalo meat, Brazil as an importer, and consumer behaviour as well. After the presentation by Wilson, he took us to the abattoir. We were allowed to take pictures and videos while the abattoir was working, as they want to be completely open about their practices and ethics. I did take some footage, but I won't post any of it just in case viewers aren't comfortable with it, because it is quite confronting. I won't spend too much time talking about the abattoir, but I will say that they are very welfare focused. They get the job done really quickly. It's actually quite amazing. After the tour, I was a student to thank Wilson and his team and give them some Adelaide University souvenirs before we headed back to the FM7 hotel. So here's a funny story. When Georgia C and I got back to the hotel, I decided to pretty much get straight in the shower and wash off the day. I began to have my shower and I accidentally got some water on my face, which is not good. We cannot drink the water there. So I moved to grab the towel from outside the shower and wipe my face, but the floor was really, really slippery, which I didn't realise until I went to take a step. So I managed to take a step and fall butt naked in the shower. And I actually ended up spraining my wrist and having it on ice overnight. So that was fun. Very, very painful. I'm used to it. I've done it a million times before. Basically sprained every bloody part of my body. So I wasn't too worried about it. But yeah, it was just a bit embarrassing, really. But what can you do? So I will see you guys tomorrow for day 5. Don't forget to like and subscribe. See you tomorrow.